Welcome to the Billy Slater Podcast. So much to get through this week, as there always is. Hello, Billy.
Hey, Salty. How are you, mate?
Doing very well. And, of course, we're all here thanks to Ram Trucks Eats Everything Else for Breakfast. So much to talk about after the weekend. Let's go back to the opening game of the weekend. It was 1v2. Melbourne got the win. Penrith, Nathan Cleary with his shoulder injury, expected to be back, though, for the finals. But it's huge, isn't it, the ramifications out of this game?
Yeah, obviously disappointing to see one of our star players go down so close to the finals. And you know, Nathan Cleary, he's accustomed to picking up injuries and dealing with them. But it's so close to the finals. We're only 3 weeks away from the first semi-final, and Nathan's picked up this injury. Look, the one thing that we do know is this is not a fresh injury for Nathan Cleary. It's a re-aggravation of an injury that he picked up in the preseason. He obviously nursed it through the first part of the year, and then by all reports from his coach, Ivan, he got on top of it while he was out with that hamstring injury. But it was a pretty innocuous way that he re-aggravated it. It didn't look like there was too much in the tackle, and it's a real concern because whether that injury settles down in time for that first final, that's the big question mark. He's only got 3-4 weeks to get that right. But the positive side of it is it's not a fresh injury. It can settle down in time.
You've been there, Billy, in that situation that Nathan Cleary finds himself in. How do you go about, obviously you go through all your rehab and everything like that, but is it a case of, okay, you generally wouldn't do this in April, May, June, but get some of your forwards to run at you? Do you just test it that way at training? How do you go about finding out that you're ready to take the field?
Yeah, well, you go through the process. The first thing Nathan will be doing is trying to settle down what has been aggravated. So the inflammation within his shoulder, by all reports, he's avoided surgery. I take that as he's avoided surgery for now. Mm-hmm. I've got no doubt that he will require surgery at some stage in the future. If this is a re-aggravation from an injury he picked up in the preseason and it's still there now, he's going to need it fixed at some stage. What they're saying is it's not bad enough to do it right now. He's going to give himself the best chance to settle it down, re-strengthen his shoulder, and then that'll allow him to play in the semi-finals and hopefully the grand final for the Panthers. Let's not forget, I think it was 2001 when he hurt his shoulder in the State of Origin series. He then went on to win the premiership. So he gave himself some time out of the game. He settled the injury down, and then he re-strengthened his shoulder to a point that he could contribute to his team, and they went on to win the premiership. So he's done this before. He knows what it takes. The big difference in this situation is he's got 3 weeks to do it. And we hear so often coaches and medical staff talk about, well, if it was a grand final, he'd be playing. So there is that element to it as well. I don't think Nathan will be at 100%, but if he can get himself back to being confident to make his tackles and contribute to the footy team, I've got no doubt he'll be there in the final series.
They've got a few little issues, Penrith, but those that can be ironed out. James Fisher-Harris looked like he was a little bit short of a gallop. Dylan Edwards still very good on Thursday night, but he'll get better for the run as well.
Yeah, I've come back from a PCL injury also. I feel like I've had nearly every injury that's possible. It's an interesting injury because Dylan Edwards is going to have to play with some sort of discomfort for the rest of the season. That won't settle down until maybe pre-season, the start of next year. When you take off, when you accelerate, you have to wear strapping to restrict your knee from moving because there is an element of movement in that knee once you tear your PCL. And I've got no doubt that he's not 100% just yet. There are a few injury issues with the Panthers at the moment. That doesn't mean that other teams don't have injuries and players aren't playing with injuries. These are just well publicised situations because they've had time out of the game and they've done their injuries in high-profile games. So we're all aware of them. There's not a team that are fully fit right now, and there won't be a team that's fully fit for the rest of the year. It's just the nature of our game. But these are key positions in the team that's won 3 premierships in a row. There are some minor concerns around the health of the Panthers at the moment.
The team that won on Thursday night, the Melbourne Storm, you talk about managing injuries. It looks as though Cameron Munster is managing that groin region quite well. Obviously, troubling him, but he's playing some good football now, and you just see that confidence starting to grow with Cam.
Yeah. Look, it's a weird situation, the groin injury with Cameron Munster, because before he went down in Magic Round, he was in awful discomfort. He was getting a lot of groin pain, and the injury that he sustained in Magic Round actually took a lot of the pressure away from that groin. He actually tore his adductor, so that took the pressure off the pubic bone, which was where it was giving him pain. So it was, in a way, a good thing that happened for him. It allowed him to recover and get over the actual injury that he sustained. And the injury that he sustained took the pressure off the big problem that was occurred. He's still going to need hip surgery at the end of the year. That's been public knowledge. But he's in a really good space. I thought he was terrific against the Panthers. He picked his moments when he ran the football, and he was really dangerous when he did run the football. So I think they're going to get better. I reckon Melbourne are only running at 80% at the moment. They've got 3 weeks to really hit their straps, and they've put themselves in a really comfortable position on the ladder. Do they rest players? Do they make sure that they're fully fit and they're fresh coming into that final series? Or do they play all their players and try and accumulate the percentage of performance? You want to be playing your best football at the right time, and I still feel the Melbourne Storm's best football is in front of them.
Interesting that topic, Billy, on resting players with, in particular with the Melbourne Storm. When you look at their last 2 games, now round 26 they're away to the Cowboys in Townsville, then round 27 on a Thursday night, and that's important too, Thursday night, so you're guaranteed more than a week before your first final. They're away to Brisbane at Suncorp Stadium. And bring that up because it's got ramifications for both the Cowboys and the Broncos, who are still an outside chance, Brisbane, of playing finals. But Craig Bellamy, if he does want to rest players, could he possibly look at round 26 and avoiding that 3-hour flight to Townsville?
Yeah, potentially. He's already been vocal about thinking about resting players, and he spoke about potentially resting a whole heap of players for one game or spreading it out over a couple of weeks. They've got their last home game against the Dolphins this week, and given their position on the ladder, they might choose to do it this week and next week. I don't think Craig Bellamy would like to rest many players in the last week of the season. Leading into the finals, ladder position and health of your squad is really important, but equally as important is the momentum going into the finals. I think, given it's a Thursday night in Brisbane against the Broncos, you've got over a week to prepare for the first semi-final. I think Craig Bellamy would like to go into that Broncos game in round 27 fully fit and fully strengthened in his team, and go after the momentum of his performances. But potentially, especially the Townsville trip, that's a long way from Melbourne. It's a 4-hour flight. Going up there, playing in the heat, I wouldn't be surprised if Craig Bellamy rested his players there, and potentially this week as well.
All right, it'll be interesting to see what does happen there with the competition leaders. Now, one team that's in the top 4, Billy, the Sharks, they Well, don't know how they got out of jail yesterday against the Newcastle Knights. It was a really good game of footy. A lot of talking points to come out of this one. The Knights season was on the line going into yesterday. Before we talk specifically about a couple of incidents through the game, it was a big 2 points for the Sharks to pick up.
It was a huge 2 points. Let's not forget, the Sharks are playing without their starting two halves in Braden Trindle and Nicho Hines. And it's evident watching the game at times when they're attacking that they do look a little bit lost, and most teams would when they have their starting halves out. And they're playing a different style. I love the way that Craig Fitzgibbon is thinking about the game and thinking about different ways to play the game. He's essentially playing with one half, and that's Dan Atkinson, who's doing a terrific job, and he's not a very experienced player at the same time. So, Brayley's playing at dummy half, but he's defending in where the halfback would defend. And then Cam McInnes is just playing as an extra forward. So essentially they're playing with one half in Dan Atkinson and then an extra ruck forward in Cam McInnes because Brayley's playing that dummy half role with the football. They're doing a wonderful job in what they've got at the moment. And they hung in there. They look beaten all ends up yesterday afternoon, but they found a way. And that's what you're going to need in semi-final football. You're going to need to find a way. And I just feel when Nicho Hines comes back, he's going to take control of the attack. It's going to help their defence. And they're in a pretty good position, the Sharks. They just need their two halves to get back nice and healthy and fit.
The Phoenix Crossland sin bin, right on half-time. Your thoughts?
I don't think it was a sin bin. It was definitely a penalty. I can see where the referee was coming from, that it was potentially a professional foul, but we haven't seen that hardly ever in the game. Without repeat infringements, we haven't seen a sin bin for that situation in the game at all. So I don't know. It was awarded outside the standard of the game. Was it a penalty and was it a professional foul? Yeah, probably. So he probably had grounds to do it, but given the fact that it hasn't been done before, he's stepped outside the standard of what the referees have created, and I feel that is a little bit unfair. That's what the Knights and Adam O'Brien would be really upset about. Not the fact that it wasn't a penalty, and not the fact that it probably wasn't a professional foul, but that hasn't been the standard of what's being created by the referees. And essentially, they create the standard. It's all an interpretation, and they sit down and try and create a consistent standard of the game. You have a look at the play the ball. There's no one that touches the ball with their foot or even attempts to touch it, but there's no penalty because that's the standard of the game right now. Don't change it. Don't change the standard of the game when that's what you've created.
The other point I think that can be made here, and it's purely as an observation, is the onus on the player playing the ball. Now, in yesterday's case, it was Jesse Ramian just to stand and play the ball. And I know Phoenix Crossland did crowd him, but Jesse took 2 or 3 steps forward as well. And that's one of those ones where occasionally you'll see the referee say, go back and play it. And although that could have been one of those instances yesterday where he even said, Jesse, you've walked off the mark. And another referee might have interpreted it that way.
That was when Phoenix Crossland got sent to the sin bin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think if there's no infringement, the onus is on the person playing the ball. And that's what the referees do. If there's no infringement and the person playing the ball drops the ball or doesn't play it properly, it's on them. It's the fact that Phoenix Crossland flopped in late. He gave the penalty away there, and then there was an infringement. So, look, I can see the penalty. Absolutely, I can see the penalty, and it should have been a penalty. They should have had a shot at goal. I just feel that the 10 minutes in the bin was a little bit hard given the standard that they've created over the season.
All right. Are teams now, Billy, going to change the way they set up for a field goal after the 2 blocking penalties yesterday?
Well, they will, because you don't want to run the risk of giving a penalty away when you've got a chance to win the game. Look, it's a tough one. And And the game has come up with this, and rightfully so. I think we're all aware that you can't have blockers, you can't have people in front of the field goal kickers. They do have to be interfered with. I didn't feel that anyone got interfered with. I think you've got to take it and understand the situation. It's like an obstruction. Did they interfere with the play? Did they affect the play? But I think teams will be getting rid of anyone in front when they're going for a shot at field goal now.
Yeah. Do you would you think that they'd be practicing standing a bit further back to give themselves some time, more long range practice, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what it does. It makes it all predictable. What you're trying to do is just make it all predictable. So you can only kick a field goal when everyone on your team knows that you're kicking a field goal. You can't instinctively just have a shot anymore. So what happens when it's, 16-10, there's 15 minutes to go and the halfback wants to have a shot at field goal? He has to let the whole team know, don't get in front of me. You know what I mean? So no one can really just have a shot anymore because there's going to be someone in front. There's going to be some, like that's what you're dealing with when you make rules and you start creating things. Like everyone knows what interference is and what a blocker is. I don't know why you can't just assess the situation and just go, well, he didn't play any part in it. We understand that there's 26 players on the field. There's a lot of people around. If it's not affecting the play, I don't know why we have to tell people where they can and can't stand.
It's almost like when you see a dummy half scoot over in and around the ruck close to the line to score a try, and they have a look at the player playing the ball. Well, he can't disappear. There's always going to be players passively on the field. Yeah,
he's going to be there. He's going to be there. So anyway, we create these little problems for ourselves, don't we?
We do. Someone said a few times lately, funny game, rugby league. Now, Billy, the Knights losing, the Dragons winning, the Cowboys winning, Brisbane 2 points with the bye. This is getting very intriguing, this bottom half of the 8. They were two big points lost yesterday by the Knights.
Yeah, look, I thought that you needed 30 points to potentially make the finals. I think you need 32 now. I think if you don't have 32 points by the end of round 27, I don't think you'll be playing finals. And that's a big call because the Broncos, Knights, and the Raiders are all on 24 points. So essentially, for me, they can't play finals. Mm-hmm. I don't think that they'll make the finals. I think the Dolphins are the only team at the moment outside the 8 that could potentially force their way into finals contention. At the moment, the Dragons are sitting on 28 points and they're in 8th position. So if they win 2 of their last 3 games, I think that'll be the top 8.
You've done your ladder predictor?
How good's the ladder predictor?
It's great.
So for any listeners out there, if you want to go on and see if your team is going to play in the finals or you can predict the top 8, go onto the NRL website and you go to the ladder predictor and you can predict who wins the remaining games of the season and that'll give you your top 8. It'll even give you the layout of who's going to play who in week 1 of the finals. So it's pretty cool, and I've done mine. We'll put it up and we'll talk about it. Okay, so at the top, I've got the Storm winning the minor premiership and the Panthers finishing second. So those 2 positions are really important because not only do you get that second bite of the cherry, you get to play at home in week 1. And if you win that home game in week 1, you're straight into a home preliminary final, which is a huge advantage leading into the grand final. You have 2 80-minute performances at home. You get them right, you're playing in a grand final. Rounding out the top 4, the Roosters and the Sharks. And then the bottom 4 of the 8, I've got the Bulldogs, Manly, the Dragons, and the Cowboys finishing 8th on 32 points. That's my ladder prediction. Obviously missing out the Dolphins, the Knights and the Broncos just outside that top 8. So, it's a pretty cool little experience to sort of go through and do your ladder prediction.
You're the
Have
one.
you done yours, Salty?
I have, and mine finished very similar. I think I had the Cowboys and Dragons around the other way. But you told me 2 weeks ago on this podcast that Brisbane's season was still alive.
It was. It was still alive. It's over now. It is. It's not over until it's over. And when they beat the Cowboys, they gave themselves a chance. But the way that games go, sometimes when you don't have your future in your own hands, this is what can happen. And the only teams that can be blamed are themselves, and that are either in there or aren't in there. It's a 27-week competition. It takes effort, it takes consistency, and there are a few teams that just haven't been consistent enough to put themselves in the race.
The one team there, the Dragons, and very good yesterday, and they haven't been able to put consecutive weeks of good footy together. So you've got them clicking now at this late stage. I know they've got games that they should win, but there's some of those games that they've lost throughout the year. They've got games coming up, or the local derby this week against the Sharks, and they finish with the Eels and Raiders.
Eels and Raiders. Yeah, well, that would be considered a fair draw. I think it's a big test this weekend against the Sharks. And I think they can beat the Sharks this weekend. They're a physical team. They're a big side, and you have a look at Cole Flanagan out at the moment. Jack Bird's playing at 5'8". That's a big body. It's not foreign to him to play that position. Because I think in certain ways that can actually strengthen their football team. I think they're a really good team, and not just now that I feel that. I think on this podcast back before a ball was kicked this season, I was asked, who might climb the ladder and play finals, and the Dragons were my pick. I just felt they had so much improvement in them, and so often you get a response from a new coach, and that's what Shane Flanagan has got from his team.
They were really good yesterday against the Titans. Unfortunately for Gold Coast, not able to get the win for Kieran Foran in his 300th. But speaking of 300, Keano Kinney, this magnificent young fullback for the Gold Coast, running for over 300 metres. I mean, what a future he's got in the game. That's only his 21st game in the NRL yesterday, and he plays tough, and he's exciting, Billy.
He picked up a third of those metres in the first minute when he ran the length and scored set up the try to start the game. Look, he's an incredible player, such a brave little player. Reminds me of another small in stature player that played for the Titans in Preston Campbell. Like just attacks space, not fearful of the contact side of the game, and has got so much skill and talent. I think he's only going to improve. The more footy he plays, the more experience he gets. The more education. He's a shining light for the Titans this year. And just on Kieran Foran, he's been a wonderful player. Talk about commitment, dedication, and persistence. Well, he epitomises that, and he's played for 5 different clubs. Played for his country, won a premiership, and he's had more than his fair share of setbacks on and off the field, and he's still there fighting away and a real leader of that team. So congratulations to Kieran, and not just the career he's had, but playing 300 games. That's a wonderful effort.
Absolutely, and great that he's going to be going around for the Titans again next year. Now, we talk about Kieran Foran playing 300 games, some Tigers players that have only played a handful of games. They had a win over South Sydney on Saturday night at Campbelltown. Billy, if you're a Tigers fan, you'd start to get excited about some of these kids that are coming through. Some of the things Lockie Galvin did again on Saturday night were terrific, but I'll tell you what, he's got some mates, doesn't he, as far as the future of this team is concerned?
Yeah, definitely. Like there's definitely reason to be excited, but take a shot of patience with that excitement as well, because they're going to need it. They're only very young, and some of them are playing in key positions. Like Lockie Galvin, he's a wonderful player, but he's still only a kid. He was at high school last year, and now he's playing in the NRL. He's had a wonderful season. There's been some really tough times for the Tigers, and I just hope that they stick strong. I hope they stick with Benji and these young kids coming through. You ever think about their spine next year? You're going to have Dream Buller, who's another year under his belt. He's going to have a full pre-season. He's going to be better for the run. He's a real star of our game. Lockie Galvin and Jerome Luai in the halves, and Api Coruscant at night. That's a pretty handy key position unit in the middle of the field, isn't it? And then you add some hard work in and around it. You had another pre-season. Some of these young outside backs that are coming through, they're a team on the rise, and it's exciting, but it's gonna need a bit of patience. It may not happen next year. It may not even happen the year after. But as long as they're on that trajectory and they keep improving individually and collectively as a team, I think there's something to look forward to there at the Tigers.
All right, something else I just want to mention before we take a quick break. The North Queensland Cowboys and their win over Canberra and the performance of Jake Clifford. It was a big call from Coach Todd Payten to put Clifford in, replacing Chad Townsend, but it paid off.
It's hard. It's hard leaving players out, and it's hard making those big calls. And Todd Payten has, he's taken that courage and he's made that big call that not only did he make it for the good of Jake Clifford and Chad Townsend, because that's what he thought was the right thing to do. He's actually set a standard for the whole team, and you can see the response from everyone. They all thought, well, if Chad Townsend can be left out of this football team, well, so can I. So there's only 3 weeks left in the competition, and he needed a response after that Broncos game the week before, and boy, didn't he get one. I thought they were brilliant, and that's what they're capable of. That's the dangerous thing about these teams that are sitting in the bottom half of that top 8. Everyone's talking about the Roosters. Everyone's talking about Panthers and Melbourne, and they're the leaders for the premiership. These teams down the bottom, you think of the Dragons and the Cowboys and the Bulldogs, they can all beat anyone on their day. So that's the dangerous thing about our competition.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the Bulldogs and their win over the Dolphins, only conceding 10 points again? I think that's 3 games in a row. They've only conceded 10 points.
Defence wins premierships. And that's the exciting thing about the Bulldogs. Look, with all due respect, I look at the Bulldogs team and I don't see enough top-end talent to be a premiership team. But I look at their defence and I go, they can win the comp because of their defence. They're a football team. There's no team in the competition, probably the Panthers a little bit, that play more like a team than the Bulldogs. They just play like a team. They know their game, they're comfortable with their game, and they're willing to stay at their game. They've done a wonderful job there, the coaching staff at the Bulldogs, and obviously headed by Cam Seraldo. They are right in this race at the moment, and they've put themselves in a really good position. There's a potential that they could finish top 4. Wouldn't that be a result?
Absolutely. Now, the talking point out of that game, the chase between Josh Adokar and the Hammer, where the stats show that the Hammer, in chasing Josh Adokar, reached 40 kilometres an hour. To put that in perspective, when Usain Bolt broke the world record, the 100-metre world record, the 2009 World Championships in Berlin, he reached a top speed of 44.72 kilometres an hour. He's only 4K behind the fastest man in history.
I know. And if he goes any faster, he won't be in and around school zones, will he?
No.
The Hammer. He's it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. I actually saw when they panned to the high shot around the halfway mark, I I thought the Fox has got him here. He doesn't look like he's going to get him the hammer, and the last 10 metres, the Fox just slowed up a little bit, and then the hammer sustained his speed. It was pretty cool to see. I think we all love the fact that we talk about who's the fastest in the NRL. Well, the Fox, he might, I don't know. He did have a sleeve on his hamstring, and he was carrying the football, but the hammer glides like no one else, and there's some speedsters in our game, and it just ignites that conversation of who's the quickest in our game.
Okay, time now on the Billy Slater podcast for the Billy M Awards. Each week we get the best team and best player of the round. Billy, your most impressive team from the weekend, round 24.
Oh, I thought the Roosters were really impressive. Coming off the bye, playing in those conditions at Allianz Stadium, I just feel it was a real committed performance by the Roosters. And in the past, Trent Robinson has put a lot of focus into timing their run. They're not necessarily at their peak throughout the year, but I just feel that he would have used the bye as a real point in the season that they can go after their performance now. And it was a really good start. So I think the Roosters have really started their momentum into the finals. They're in a good ladder position, and I thought their performance on the weekend was of high quality. So they're the team of the week for the week.
Okay, now this is a tough list. Most impressive player from round 24. There's some good performances across the weekend.
Have you got a list for me? I need a list.
So Brandon Smith, James Tedesco from the Roosters, Tyron Wishart keeps going well. Jacob Carraz, Jake Clifford, very good. Val Holmes, 26 points for Val Holmes over the weekend. Keanu Kinney, Lockie Galvin, Ben Hunt. There's just a few.
There's a fair list there, isn't there? I thought Keanu Kinney was great, although I didn't see the whole lot of that game. Every time I was watching it, he was doing something good. Val Holmes is the winner of the player of the round this week, and it's off the back of a big move and a big decision. Obviously deciding to go to the Dragons next year, and that's a mutual agreement between himself and the Cowboys. But to come out and put all that aside and perform the way that he did, scored 3 tries, and he's a wonderful player, and they'll need him to be at their best. They'll need him to be at his best if they're going to go on and give this premiership a shake.
Absolutely. All right, this is the Billy Slater podcast. Thanks to Ram Trucks. Eats everything else for breakfast. Time now for some listener questions. This one's from Tim, Billy. I can put your thinking cap on here. Hey, Billy, who do you think have been the top 3 signings this year? Mine would be Crichton, Brooks and Leniu. Thanks, says Tim.
Yeah, look, I don't think you can go past Stephen Crichton. I think what he's done for the Bulldogs with his performance, but also everything you hear about the standard that he sets. I heard Gus say yesterday that it's an everyday thing. He is there every day doing it, and he brings that infectious standard and quality to the environment, and that's coming out in the performances. I think he's potentially been the buy of the season. Just given what he's done for that footy team and that club.
Yeah, he's absolutely tremendous. Just one of those other players there, Luke Brooks, 226 games in his career. He's about to embark on his first finals campaign.
How good! How exciting for him! And he's playing great. He's not the centre of attention, but he's contributing to his footy team. And the other thing he's found his running game again. I don't know where it came up, but I saw his debut game. I think it was earlier in the year or last year. His debut game came up, and he actually starred, and it was all in and around his running game. He was really dangerous running the football, and that's his game. That's his strength, and he's done a great job to firstly make the decision to up and leave the Tigers. It's been a fantastic decision for him, and he's going to get rewarded in playing in a final series.
Yeah, absolutely. This one's from Sergio. Do you think Wayne Bennett can turn the Rabbitohs around next season and turn them into finals contenders? So that's from Sergio.
Yes, without a doubt. I think he can make a real difference. And it's been a disappointing year for the Rabbitohs. They've had their fair share of injuries, but they have certainly underperformed. And you ever think back to when he was at the Rabbitohs, and some of the stars that are there were playing their best footy. So I've got no doubt that Wayne Bennett, he won't solve all the problems, but he will help them play at their best. And I think they can turn it around with him as their head coach.
All right. Now, if you've got a question for Billy, don't forget you can send your questions through to Billy Slater Podcast at 9.com.au. We saw some great games in NRLW over the weekend. Broncos defeated the Raiders in a great contest at Langlands Park, Totally Workwear Stadium on Saturday, 28-22. The Cowboys in an upset over the Titans. Well done to North Queensland, 11-10. Roosters, don't let the scoreline fool you here. They overcame the Dragons 28-8, but the Dragons were right in this contest for a large part of it. Sharks defeated the Knights. Billy, you were with me calling that game yesterday. Yep. They were tremendous, winning by 2. The Eels beat the Tigers by 2, but that Sharks-Knights game was terrific.
Yeah, there's 2 teams that really impressed me over the weekend. The Broncos. I thought the Broncos played a great brand of football, and I haven't seen all the NRLW games this year, but they would be a team that I feel could really push for the premiership. The other team that impressed me was the game that we called the Sharks and the Knights, and I just thought the Sharks played really expansive with the football. I thought they played a really good brand. It was a hectic win that the teams had to deal with at Shark Park yesterday, but I just think that they dealt with that the best, and I was pretty impressed with the way that they went about it. So, yeah, the Broncos and the Sharks were 2 teams that impressed me on the weekend.
All right, now we turn our attention to round 25 of the NRL. Some big games to come. Well, if Brisbane are an outside chance, they've got to dispose of Parramatta on Friday night at home. That'll be a big night at Suncorp. Yeah,
it will be, and they're fresh off a bye. They've got a whole heap of injuries. I think Reece Walsh is out with a broken hand.
Yes.
But if they're going to give any of their final hopes, keep it alive, they have to beat the Eels on Friday night. The big one for me is the Sunday game. The Dragons and the Sharks. It's a big battle. We all know the history between the local derby down there, and it's played at Wynn Stadium, so you could imagine that the hill's going to be full. There's a lot on the line. The Dragons are looking to consolidate and hold their spot in the top 8, and the Sharks, well, they'll be looking to hold their spot in the top 4. So a lot on the line there on Sunday, Arvo.
Yeah, absolutely. Some big games to come, round 25 of the NRL. You have a great week, Billy, and we'll chat next week.
Will do. Thanks, Salty.
Thanks, Billy. This has been the Billy Slater Podcast. Of course, thanks to the great team at Ram Trucks. Eats everything else for breakfast. New episode drops each and every Monday.